Hello, everybody. This is Jack Hammer from the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. Hope you're all doing well on this fine Tuesday, the opening day of 49ers training camp, as the players all descend on Santa Clara, show up today for their physicals, and get ready to go for training camp, which actually kicks off tomorrow with the first practice tomorrow morning, just after 10 o'clock. Wanted to go through some of my key takeaways from the day, just kind of go through some of what we heard. It was an interesting day. It all really started out with, the question everybody's been talking about all off season has been around Trey Lance. Is he going to be the starting quarterback? What's going to happen with Jimmy Garoppolo? Depending on where you're listening, you're hearing different reports on how they feel. The one thing with this whole thing is if you've just been listening to Kyle Shanahan all off season, you'll know what the 49ers were going to do. He said it during the owners meeting. He said it when he spoke to the media during the draft. He spoke every time that Kyle Shanahan has had an opportunity to speak to the media. He's pretty much told you that it's going to be Trey Lance as a quarterback. For some reason, the national media kept running with this thought that it was going to be Jimmy Garoppolo. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that Trey Lance didn't play a lot. And so since the 49ers stuck by Jimmy Garoppolo last year, it made it seem like the 49ers weren't all in on Trey Lance, despite everything that they said and did, and just really believing what was coming out of their mouths. So that was the big news from the day, was Kyle Shanahan asked about Trey Lance and just being, straight up, not only talking about that he and John Lynch had spoken with Jimmy Garoppolo earlier in the day, that everybody knows the direction that they're going. The 49ers know where they're going, what they want to do. Jimmy Garoppolo knows what they want to do. And at the end of the day, they're moving on to Trey Lance, and that is how they're starting training camp, with Trey Lance being the guy. And, it's interesting. The quarterback situation's gone round and round, but it's going to be fun to watch how this all plays out with Trey Lance, because he looked really good last year in training camp. If you recall, there was a point early on in the season, during the preseason anyway, even leading up to the Chiefs game, I believe it was, when John Lynch went on KMBR radio and talked about how Trey Lance was pushing Jimmy Garoppolo for that starting job. There was a belief within the organization last year that he was going to be able to, could possibly even become the starter a year ago as a rookie. Things kind of leveled off. The high level, big time plays didn't continue to happen. There was a little bit of a lack of consistency there. And they decided to finally stick with Jimmy Garoppolo. But if you were at training camp last year, you saw the plays being made by Trey Lance all over the field. He played at a high level at times. There was definitely some ups and downs, but Kyle Shanahan mentioned that today. He was asked about it, and he even mentioned today that there's going to be ups and downs with Trey Lance. He understands that. It's all part of the process. The team feels like they have a good enough roster around Trey Lance that even if he struggles, the 49ers are going to be good enough to win games early on while Trey gets his feet underneath him. And then once Lance gets set and gets settled in, he's going to be able to take off and do things for the team that they haven't had in the past. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see how this whole thing plays out, how it comes together. Lance, if you recall, last year during training camp he had completed a high percentage of passes, right around 69% of his passes, compared to a lower number for Garoppolo. But the interesting piece, and this is going to be something that I'm going to be watching for starting tomorrow at practice, is how these guys are doing in certain situations. We can look at the stats and say, that's great, he completed 69%. How many times did they convert on third down with him on the field? How many times did they score in the red zone when he was on the field? Those types of things. How did they move the ball? When they went to a move the ball period, how did they move the ball down the field with Trey Lance in there? So those are going to be some of the things that I'll be taking a look at, trying to really keep a close eye on with my notes and things like that for you as we get into actual practices tomorrow. So in terms of what's going to be taking place with Jimmy Garoppolo, the 49ers aren't ready to move on from him just quite yet. They've been saying this all along as well, that they are going to stick with Jimmy Garoppolo. They're not going to just give away a guy who could be a starting quarterback in the NFL. They're going to hold on to him, and we'll see how long they hold on to him. Garoppolo, the deal with Garoppolo is if he's on the roster when they break down to 53, that's when his contract becomes guaranteed. So that's kind of the timing right there in terms of when a decision has to be made. The 49ers are certainly going to look to have something done sooner. They talked about that today. They're going to look for something to be done as soon as possible, with the understanding that it might take some time. They're kind of having to wait a little bit here on injuries to other players, other teams, quarterbacks, and those kind of things. So that's also kind of something that could play here into their favor a little bit, is if something does happen with Trey Lance. Not saying that we want that to happen, but just, knock on wood, something, with Trey Lance, then they have a quarterback there that can take his place. But I don't think that's really what they're planning on. So that's just really quick. I want to shout out a few folks over in the comment section. We have Texas Niner says, Hammer, good to have you on, Texas Niner. The Sentinel says, woo, he's ready for the training camp to get going, get into full swing, and 49ers to be on the field. Curtis McLeod says, hey, Jack, how's it going? Camp is finally here. That is right. We are right there. And then we have Big Luke Walsh in the house as well. He says, hi, everyone. Good to have you on with us as well, Luke. And then Texas Niner pointing out that, yep, with Kyle being so extra vocal about Trey, I think the Niners have been seeing something special. Yeah, I mean, you go back, if you we didn't really get to see him as riders. We didn't get to see a whole lot of Trey Lance once training camp broke last season, other than the starts against Arizona and Houston. We did play some in between there, but other than what we saw on the field, we didn't really get to see a whole lot of them because we don't get to see that part of practice. So it's an interesting piece. We finally got to see him during OTAs and minicamp, and during that time, Lance performed very well, about 75% completion rate, making some really big plays and some good plays at times, and did a nice job with the offense. And we'll see how that transitions into the fall here as they start training camp tomorrow with the first practice. Definitely one of the things that I noticed that you're saying here about how Kyle was vocal is the first couple of minutes of I don't know if you actually saw the press conference today or if you just heard it, but if you saw it, one of the things that jumped out to me was that Kyle Shanahan seemed to be wanting to talk. He there was a couple of questions early on, and he did not seem to really want to beat around the bush, kind of like what you saw from John Lynch. John Lynch was being very diplomatic with his responses regarding Jimmy Garoppolo, and Kyle Shanahan kind of just broke in and just said, Kyle Shanahan today reminded me a little bit of Eddie DeBartolo. If you remember back when Eddie DeBartolo was the owner and Mark Trestman was the offensive coordinator, and they struggled really bad that year. Somebody asked him after the year during a press conference when they introduced Steve Mariucci as the head coach, what was going to happen with Trestman, and Ed DeBartolo just said he's gone, and that was pretty much what you heard from Kyle Shanahan today when John Lynch was trying to be diplomatic, like I said, in his responses, and Kyle Shanahan pretty much just grabbed it and said, "Look, we've talked to him. Everybody knows the situation. This is Trey's team." Very similar type of a thing. So, gonna be fun to see how this all plays out. This is a big deal for Kyle Shanahan. It's one of the first times in his career that he's had a hand-picked quarterback. If you want to believe that in Washington he didn't want RG3, then this would be the first time that it's really been his own quarterback that he's getting to develop. And it's a big moment for him. And it's a big moment for the 49ers as well because they gave up a lot for Trey Lance. Lance has some special qualities. Definitely going to be a guy who I think is going to bring some explosiveness to the offense from the quarterback position that they haven't had in the past. And the only thing really to worry about when it comes to Lance is can he be efficient? And if he's efficient, if he's taking the checkdowns when they're there, if he's taking the shorter throws when they're there, and he's smart about when he's taking those deep shots, his completion percentage is going to go up, I think, and things are going to level out a little bit for him, and he's going to become the player that the 49ers were hoping they were going to get when they drafted him. So we'll see how it plays out. We have Niner Jess in the house. He says, "Hey, Jack, come on the always faithful 24/7 show. We'd love to have you Wednesdays at 9. Yeah, Wednesdays are the one day that I don't typically do a show, but maybe we can do that. Not this week, but next week. Let me get myself get going here with training camp, but maybe next week we can do something the week after. But that's don't lose it. We can definitely set something up for that. Cannot wait for, as Ricardo says, he says, ready for your takeaways from practice over the next several weeks. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it, Ricardo. This is the best time of the year. in a lot of ways. The games are great. This is a lot of fun to be able to break down practice on a daily basis. So I'm really looking forward to it. But the deal with Garoppolo, getting back to the topic there, Garoppolo will be around the team for a little bit, but expect him to be gone by the time final cuts come. Maybe even a trade taking place there. It doesn't sound like the 49ers want to just release him. So look for them to be scouring everything and taking those calls to try to find a way to move Garoppolo through a trade. Let's see what else we have going on over here. We have there's Luke remembers that press conference with Eddie DeBarlo, just letting it out. I'll hang out right there. Okay, now let's go. I'm going to jump around a little bit, but Jack, what's your offensive line prediction? So this was another one of my takeaways from today. This was one that I've been talking about a little bit on the channel for the last few weeks. Is there's kind of had been an assumption that how the offensive line was going to set up, and that it was going to be Trent Williams and Banks with Brendel and Brunskill at center and right guard, and then Mike McGlinchey out at right tackle. Today, Kyle Shanahan was asked about what's happening, at that position, at center, at right guard, and he dropped a little bit of a nugget there, saying that it's going to be an open competition. This is going to be a really big time competition at center, saying that Jano Brunskill, he started at right guard for the 49ers for a while. They know that he can play center. They have Brendel doing it too. There's definitely going to be some competition there, big time, he says. We have possible rookies to compete at right guard. So it's going to be a bit of a musical chairs in there during training camp. And this was something that I kind of been talking about when I was putting together my predictions for my 53-man roster. Was the offensive line, if Daniel Brunskill is competing at center, that changes the way that the whole thing works out, because Brunskill way more experience in the NFL as a starter at center than either of the other two guys that he's up against that are there, meaning Jake Brendel, Keaton Sutherland, and then there's the two undrafted rookie free agents that they have as well, Jason Poe and Donovan West. Brunskill played center for the 49ers in 2020, did an okay job of it. Wasn't great, but he wasn't bad either. He's shown the 49ers that he can play right guard. They know what they have of him there, so I think they're going to take a long look at him at center and see if he gives them a better player there than what Brendel gives them. And that's like James says right here. Brendel basically got a vote of no confidence in today's press conference with the way that question was answered, because it was basically like, I need to talk to Brendel because we need to see what we're going to do there. We're going to have that big competition at center. We have a couple of rookies that can take over at right guard. Those rookies would be Spencer Burford and Nick Zakelj. Don't forget also Jalen Moore took a lot of reps at right guard during OTAs and minicamp. He's probably going to be getting some more reps out at right tackle as well, especially early on. We'll see how it works out with Mike McGlinchey. Not practicing early on. It's going to be interesting to see whether those reps go to Jalen Moore or to Justin School. During OTAs, it was primarily Justin School. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. So the whole offensive line is, I think the left two spots are set, and we know that it's going to be Trent Williams. I feel pretty solid that it's going to be Aaron Banks. Mike McGlinchey will be out at right tackle as long as he's healthy. The other two are up for grabs. Brendel at center and a guy like Spencer Burford or Jalen Moore in there at right guard would be an interesting scenario for the 49ers. Getting a little bit younger along the offensive line, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that group plays out. It's been one of the more maligned groups from the fan base throughout this offseason, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that group comes together and if they're able to pull it together, or as was the other question that was asked today, is do you go outside the organization and bring in one of these free agents, such as J.C. Treader, and the name wasn't mentioned, but John Lynch did say, they, like at every position, they have a list of guys, and depending on the needs and what happens, they will make calls and things like that. So we'll see how it plays out. I don't think they're going to do that early on. They're going to wait to see how this thing plays out for a week or two. But definitely keep an eye on that center position and the camp battle between Brendel, Brunskill, and Keaton Sutherland in particular. So that's going to be an interesting one for sure. Let's see what else we've got. He says, we have KW2421. He asked real quick, do you think Kyle expects to make the playoffs this year? I do. That was one of the things that he was asked a number of times today what his thought was about the roster. There were questions about the roster brought up to many times, and he was consistent on the thought that this was a really strong roster. They have a solid depth throughout. They have a good mix of veterans and young players. And I agree with them on that. I think the roster itself looks to be very strong. If the guys that they're expecting to be the guys, if their expectations are met with the talent they've put in there, this is a team that's a playoff team. They're a team that can win somewhere between 10 to 13 games. I know it's a wide margin in the NFL, but I would lean more towards the 13. There's a very good chance that they start the season off either 6-0. If they're anything worse than 4-2, I think it's a disappointment with the first 6 games they have on their schedule. So they've got to get out to a quick start. 6-0 would really go a long way towards getting to 13 wins. But if they're 4-2, that still gets them to around 11, I think. So. I do think that Shanahan and company expect to make the playoffs this year. They have too many guys on. There's too much solid depth. They have too many guys that are at the top of their game. You go through their roster, guys like Deebo Samuel, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Trent Williams, obviously. I think I mentioned Warner already. Jimmy Ward on the back end and in the secondary. They have just a number of solid guys throughout this roster, and so. They need to get over again this season, get to the playoffs. I've talked about it before. Kyle Shanahan's first 5 seasons are actually have a better record than what the 49ers had under Bill Walsh and that regime. And this is the year for them. They've got their quarterback now. Bill Walsh was able to develop a quarterback throughout the start of his tenure. So by the time he got to 84, which was year 6. They had built it up with Joe Montana. Kyle Shanahan hasn't done that, so this is his first year with Trey Lance. But I do feel that Lance is going to be a solid starter for the 49ers. We'll see I think he's going to have more and more ups than he's going to have downs, so we'll see how that plays out for him. Some of the other takeaways, the competition at center, though, that's going to be a hot one for sure. Deebo Samuel, there was an update on Deebo Samuel today. He is in Santa Clara. The 49ers are continuing to work toward getting a new deal done with him. And Lynch is optimistic on it, but he says the talks have been productive, but at the same time, hold off just a little bit because nothing is imminent. They don't have anything. And I think really what he's saying there is nothing's across the goal line, so don't get too excited. We're having talks. I think that for me, with these conversations with Deebo Samuel have been ongoing. I'm really interested to see what happens tomorrow. Does Deebo Samuel take the field, or is he there standing on the sidelines kind of like he was during OTAs and minicamp, especially? He wasn't during OTAs, but like he was during minicamp where he's there, but he's not participating. He's watching from the sidelines, standing with the team behind it, not dressed fully and participating. It's going to be interesting to see how that works out starting tomorrow with Deebo Samuel. We have a similar situation with Nick Bosa as well, because they asked about Nick Bosa. And that one was even, while they were pretty positive, it sounds like with Deebo Samuel, like they're working on that one. When it comes to Nick Bosa, everything points to that one being put off till next year. John Lynch pointed out how the 49ers have a way of doing business, which is generally their re-signings, which this would be when Nick Bosa gets done on the last year of the player's contract before that starts. Since the 49ers picked up that 5th-year option earlier this offseason on Bosa, this next year is actually his last year on his contract. And so I think what they're trying to do is stagger some of these deals. And so I think Bosa is going to get done next year. I don't think there's anything imminent when it comes to Bosa compared to what we see right now with Deebo Samuel. KW2421, getting back to the Jimmy Garoppolo topic, he says, is there any real possibility that they trade Jimmy to Seattle? Something tells me Kyle wouldn't be intimidated to do that. If I'm the 49ers, and that's a tough one because I think that Jimmy Garoppolo in Seattle makes them a better team. At the same time, at this point, if you're as confident as you seem to be in Trey Lance, And if you're as confident in your roster as you seem to be, go ahead and send Jimmy Garoppolo up there, because you probably don't feel like there's any way in heck that Seattle's going to beat you if he's up there, even if Jimmy Garoppolo is up there, because you have the players on your team that are going to be able to overcome that. So I do think that Garoppolo to Seattle, I talked about this a couple weeks ago. It makes a lot of sense that for the Seahawks. I think Garoppolo is a nice fit for them, considering he's better than what they have on their roster. I know he's a little bit more expensive, but he's better than what they have. He can get them some more wins this year, maybe even on the edge of the playoffs or at the last spot in the playoffs. Carry him through to next year, and then whoever they get in the draft, he can be the bridge to them. So you get 2 years out of Garoppolo to kind of help get your team turned around, and then move forward from there. So Seattle for Jimmy Garoppolo, in my opinion. James says that he wants Deebo to be on the sidelines, no injuries. He knows the playbook. He'll have to gain rapport with Trey, even though he won't get fed as much in a run-heavy offense with many targets. I think that I think that Trey Lance and Deebo Samuel, there was a report there last year. I know myself and some others have talked about about that rapport with Brandon Ayuk, and that's definitely something there. The two worked together all off season, or quite a bit this off season. They had a number of connections last year during training camp. They didn't really hit it off all that well during OTAs and minicamp, but I think Brandon Ayuk is going to have a good year. But I think Trey Lance and Deebo Samuel are going to hit it off real well. So it'd be nice to have Deebo Samuel out there practicing, running around, getting himself ready for the season. But I agree with you to a certain extent, James, that the 49ers can go into this season without having had Deebo Samuel around throughout the training camp and still all of the training camp, and still have him up to speed and ready to go. And it's a similar situation with Nick Bosa as well, right? Here's Nick Bosa as a guy who coming off a 15.5 sack season. Last year, it was a slow build up for him. He was coming off the knee injury. It'll be interesting to see if they kind of take some of that same approach and just have him take his time and kind of ramp it up, and really, to where he's full go when it comes to really like that last week of the preseason, when the fans are gone and the team is practicing on their own. That's when we saw Nick Bosa really take over last year and really start to ramp it up with getting ready to play. I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen again. There's really no reason to ramp him up earlier. He showed that he can do it. And when you look at Nick Bosa, the one question mark with him is, can he do it 2 years in a row? He hasn't done that during his time so far since he got to Ohio State. His numbers have been up and down on it every year. A lot of that has to do with injuries. So if you can keep Nick Bosa healthy for 2 years in a row, that'd be a big plus for the 49ers in that defense, which really needs him to function at full speed, even though they have a good amount of depth there. And they showed in 2020 without Bosa that they can be solid, but they're a different team when Nick Bosa's on the field. Let's see what else we have. Mike Thompson says, an extra 4 interceptions for defense if the Sea Chickens trade for Jimmy. Yeah, right. Hey, these guys have a lot of experience playing against Jimmy Garoppolo, and really good linebackers. I think would give him fits, and that's what we've seen throughout his career. So that's definitely could be a part of it. If the camera's blurry, it's probably because my internet is a little off sometimes here. It doesn't always have the top speed, and I think one of my sons is currently using the internet to play his video game upstairs, even though I told him to get off. So hopefully it'll clear up for you. Let's see real quick. So we talked about Deebo Samuel. We talked about Jimmy Garoppolo. The competition at center definitely is going to be a lot of fun. I think that also bleeds out into, like we talked about, the right guard really and right tackle as well. The other thing that came out today, was the work that's being put in by Trey Sermon. Kyle Shanahan was asked about Trey Sermon today, and he talked about how built he is and how Sermon has been doing everything that he can do to get himself up and going and ready to go for the season. You know, Sermon's spot on the roster has kind of been a question ever since the 49ers used that third-round pick on Tyrion Davis-Price. And, you know, you add into that the fact that Sermon only had 41 carries last year. It's going to be interesting to see how that works out. But I will say this. Sermon's ability to run the inside zone is something that's going to be an interesting fit with Trey Lance in particular. It's a little bit different with Lance because I think you'll see them running out of the shotgun a little bit more. Maybe not, regular shotgun as we're used to, but maybe a little more of like a pistol look, that type of thing. One of the things with Sermon, it doesn't matter even if it's out of the shotgun. He's really good on that inside zone. Ran it a ton at Oklahoma. Did it a bunch at Ohio State as well. When he didn't play a whole lot with Trey Lance last year, they did play together though against the Seattle Seahawks in the first matchup at Levi's, and Sermon did really well with Lance on the field. He got 8 carries in that game with Lance when he was paired with Lance. 4 of those 8 carries went for 6 or more yards. In total, of those 8 carries, he had 40 yards. So he averaged 5 yards a carry. He had a 15-yarder, a 7. I think it was 1 7 and a couple of 6 yards carries or something like that. And then there was a couple of shorter ones. But that just kind of shows you the where things could go when it comes to Trey Sermon. He has the ability when it gets there, right? He has it. It's going to be interesting to see if he can carry through this season. One of the big things I know they talked about with him was with Trey Sermon was the need to keep it tight to the hole. Basically, he has a tendency to kind of drift off of the blocks a little bit. He needs to keep it a little bit tighter there. That's going to help him get upfield. So keep an eye on Trey Sermon, though. I think he's going to be given a chance, and he has the potential based off of what you saw of him at, like I said, at Ohio State and Oklahoma to really be a solid runner in this offense. And I think the way that this team is going to evolve with Trey Lance, the running game, I think is going to be slightly different, a little bit more between the tackles, more of that inside zone and gap scheme. And I think he's going to be really good with that. So that's where we are with Trey Sermon. Now, that's not it. We also had a signing today. The 49ers, it was reported first off last week by Brad Graham, but it was made official today. They had a few linemen in for workout yesterday. The 49ers today signed defensive lineman Robert Nkemdiche. Nkemdiche was originally drafted by the Cardinals in the first round. At the end of the first round, 29th in the 2016 draft. He played 3 seasons out there with the Cardinals, 16 through 18. Spent a season with Miami. Didn't play in 2020, and then in 2021 he was up with Seattle. Last year with the Seahawks, Nkemdiche played in 9 games, finished with only 15 tackles and 1 pass defense. He just hasn't, he hasn't had much go right for him in his career. Those 4.5 sacks all came in one season. He's only 27 years old as well, and he's definitely somebody that it's interesting that they would add somebody to this group. The 49ers defensive line has room. It's stocked with talent, especially on the edge positions. Nkemdiche, if he can play a little bit more interior, might be able to push those guys in there. We'll see if he can make a little bit of a splash with this signing or not. But he's going to get a chance here with the 49ers. Just another first rounder that they threw into this mix for their team this year. So Robert Nkemdiche becoming a 49er today with a signing there. Mike Thompson pointing out that most of the picks from last year were for this season, redshirt years and pickups to help Sir Lance. I agree with you. I agree with you a lot on that, especially the early round picks. You had, like you said, Trey Lance. I think Lance really was expected for this season. I think it's the same thing with Aaron Banks. I think they were really targeting him for 2022. And Sermon is a guy who, as well, fits that bill. I remember the night that Banks and Sermon were drafted, going on YouTube and talking about there being a changing of the way that the 49ers are building their team. maybe being a little bit more physical, a little bit more physical in the run game, a little bit more between the tackles and those types of things. And I do think that we're going to see that take place here in this season. You're going to see more runs between the tackles. You look at the 49ers running backs, and they're all built the same, with the exception of JaMychal Hasty. Mitchell and Sermon, Tyrion Davis-Price, Jeff Wilson Jr., and Jordan Mason, those five are all big body backs. Mason probably the fastest of that group, but Trey Sermon, when he gets ahead of steam, he runs extremely hard. That shows up on his film from his college days. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out with this roster. I'm looking forward to. You start to go through this roster as a whole. There's not really anywhere other than linebacker where I don't think there's some kind of a battle. I think linebacker is the one spot where there's a battle of linebacker between Greenlaw and Azeez Al-Shaair, I believe, on who's going to be starting alongside of Fred Warner when they're in their nickel situations, where they only have two linebackers on the field. But other than that, the linebacker room is pretty solid. Quarterback room is pretty solid, but you look at the offensive line, there's definitely battles there. We talked about those already. I think there's going to be some battles at tight end, wide receiver, definitely for the back end of the wide receiver room at 6. The defensive line is crazy good with all the NFL level talent that they have. In the secondary, at the cornerback position, you have to find a nickel corner. I think Darqueze Dennard's the odds-on favorite for right now. He's going to get pushed for sure during camp. And then, on the outside, does Jason Verrett come back? If Jason Verrett comes back, how does that impact what they are expecting to do with Emmanuel Moseley? Because Travarius Ward was the big signing. As long as he's healthy, he's going to be starting. And then in the secondary at safety, you have Jimmy Ward and Talanoa Hufanga. Even at the safety spot, even though Hufanga might be a little bit of a question mark, you pretty much, I think, know who those 4 safeties are going to be, that it's going to be Hufanga, Ward, Tarvarius Moore, and George Odom. The other 3 guys are undrafted free agents. So a lot of these other spots, though, have some really talented players. There's talent all throughout the roster, but there's some really talented players that are going to create some good matchups. And these redshirt free guys like you're talking about, especially Lance and Banks and Sermon, I think all 3 of those guys are going to play big roles for the 49ers in 2022. A couple of other news and notes, a couple of things to hit on really quick. The 49ers are going to be, 49ers have 3 guys that are going to be starting the season on PUP. Well, one of them is on NFI. Kalia Davis will start off on the NFI, which is the non-football injury list. NFI is basically the same thing as PUP. It's just a different designation. And the reason it's NFI instead of PUP is because Davis's injury occurred while he was playing in college at UCF. So since it was in college, not in the NFL, they consider that NFI, but it's handled the same way as the PUP list. Joining him on that PUP list are going to be tight end Charlie Warner. Warner had core muscle surgery during the offseason, so he's going to start on that PUP list. They're hoping to have him back during training camp, but that's not a given. We'll see how that plays out for Warner. That, I think, played a role in the team bringing in Troy Fumagalli and the other tight end as well. So we'll see how that shakes out for Charlie Warner. And joining Warner on that PUP list is going to be Jason Verrett, the cornerback tore his ACL week 1 last year out in Detroit, obviously. He's working his way back as well. So he will be on the PUP list to start the season off. So those are your 3. And then in addition to the 3 PUPs, you have Mike McGlinchey, Javon Kinlaw, and Azeez Al-Shaair. McGlinchey with the torn quad tendon that he suffered last year. Javon Kinlaw with the knee. He had his reconstructive surgery. Both of those surgeries occurred during the season last year. And then Azeez Al-Shaair, he had surgery this year after the season. He had injured himself. We had a lot of issues with the shoulder. I think he also had a knee surgery. So he had a couple of surgeries. All 3, McGlinchey, Kinlaw, and Al-Shaair, have been cleared to practice, but the team's going to be bringing them along slowly. So don't expect to see them on the field anytime soon. It's just going to be a slow ramp up, kind of like what we're talking about earlier with Nick Bosa. So keep an eye out on that as well. And really quick, Raphael 562 Niners, he's a member of the Toolbox, which is why he has that little $ next to his name. So if you like what you see on the channel and you want to participate that way, we greatly appreciate you guys taking the time to join the Toolbox. Actually have some merchandise that I'm working on getting figured out. I definitely have the design for some shirts, those types of things. So that will be going out at some point here during the season as well. And if you're a member of the Toolbox at different levels, there's one that will actually have shirts available. So check it out. Even if you want to just join in on the lowest level, that's awesome. If you're a member of the Toolbox, you always get your stuff shouted out in terms of your comments and questions. So really quick, we also have Moses. He comes in and he's a big DB guy. He says, Jack, I'd like Denard. He is vulnerable to the double move, but the blasphemy you talk of my side, my guy Quantrez Knight, not cool. LOL. Quantrez Knight's a good guy, right? He's a undrafted rookie free agent. They have him listed as a safety, but he can play safety and slot. So we'll see how it works out for him. Denard, I really like. I like the size. I like the physicality that I think he can bring to the position. Denard looks like a guy. He looks the part. He looks the part of a guy that's in between a linebacker and a cornerback. He's was a former first-round draft pick, was actually drafted ahead of Jimmy Ward in that 2014 draft. So we'll see what happens with Darqueze Denard if he's able to fill in that slot cornerback role. But it's going to be a fun one to watch how that one plays out. Say that a lot of fun ones. And then Darren Britt coming out with the thoughts on special teams. I think the 49ers special teams is going to be much improved. That was the goal, right? The goal for the 49ers going into this offseason, or with the moves that they made, is that their special teams better be improved. They signed Oren Burks, they signed George Odom, Ray McLeod was signed as well, the wide receiver. So that's definitely something to, the special teams. They also get back Tarvarius Moore, so let's don't lose sight of that. Their special teams units should be better this season. Robbie Gould is a guy who's pretty well set from 45 yards in. You start getting past 45 and it gets a little iffy, but inside 45, Robbie Gould's usually good to go. Mitch Wishnowsky does a good job, on his punting. It would be nice to have a guy that can put the ball into the end zone on a consistent basis on the kickoffs, I think. But maybe they don't. Maybe that's not what they want him to do. Maybe they want him to force a return and in an effort to try to get that tackle inside the 25. So I think when it comes to special teams, if the 49ers can, we know what the 49ers offense can do. I think we know what their defense can do based off of the last couple of years. One of their biggest issues last season was special teams was just so porous. They actually lost one game primarily as a result of the special teams up in Seattle. I think even in the NFC Championship game, there was a kickoff return late that put them in kind of in deep field position. They were able to dig out of it, but they got shut down on third down late in the game, and they ended up punting. That's right before the tart drop. But if their special teams can be better, if they can just improve, get better kickoff returns and punt returns, going to lead to better field position for the offense, so they don't have to go 75 yards every time they touch the ball. If you're getting better coverage on the kicks and the punts, the defense has more room to work with to allow you to have to take your time down the field. Gives them a little bit more of a chance to not give up a touchdown on those drives. Because the 49ers defense usually does a pretty good job of keeping teams in front of them. So when it comes to the special teams, I think they're looking to be much improved. They have a new coordinator there as well in Schneider. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on, because the 49ers made an investment in special teams. It was an area that they felt they needed to improve on. They've tried to take steps to it, and we'll see if it works out for them. If you could do me a favor, though, like Raphael 5629 said earlier, and then Darren Worthington here, if you guys could hit that like button for me, I'd really appreciate it. Hit that like button, hit subscribe as well if you like what you're seeing and you haven't already subscribed to the channel. Going to be putting out content throughout this month. I will be at almost every practice that's going to be taking place for the 49ers. There might be one or two here and there that I miss, but otherwise I will be there, and I will be reporting live from Levi Stadium after practices with a report as well. James asks, what's the first thing that I'll look for tomorrow, either on or off the field? I'm going to be looking for Jimmy Garoppolo, see if I can find him. It's going to be like, where is he? Where's Jimmy Garoppolo? Where's Deebo Samuel? Those are the two that everybody kind of wants to know what's happening with them. They've already said that Jimmy Garoppolo won't be practicing with the team. So I'd be surprised to see Jimmy Garoppolo even working on a side field during practice, just because of the sideshow that would create. So I think if Garoppolo is going to be getting work with the team in his rehabilitation efforts, I think that happens either before practice or after practice, not during practice. They don't want to have that going on while the team's on the field. That's a distraction that they're not going to want. So be keeping an eye out for that. Looking, is Deebo Samuel practicing? That's one of the big ones. Is Deebo Samuel there, which we already know he is, but is he going to be on the field, or is he going to be holding, standing on the sidelines? That's a big one for me, and that's something I'll be keeping an eye on, looking for. And I'm really looking forward to it. This will be the first time that I've been at training camp for the first practice. Last year it was day 2 or 3 before I was able to show up. This year, a much more in-depth schedule in terms of covering training camp for you guys. And Mike Thompson on Ray McLeod saying that Ray is going to make some noise this year. And we'll find out. That's something that we're gonna. I think they have him penciled in to be one of the returners. McLeod's a guy who looked really good during OTAs and minicamp. We don't, as a receiver. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with McLeod. How much of a part of the offense is he? It does, I think he has a couple of years on his contract. I'm pretty sure he's one of the guys that's going to make the roster. So it's that receiver room, though, on the back end is going to be really, there's some interesting decisions to be made at the back end of that room, a wide receiver. Mark asks, if the team and Jimmy part ways, are there O linemen in free agency we could use in your mind? Let me take a sip real quick. Yeah, there's definitely. If the 49ers move on from Jimmy Garoppolo, J.C. Treader, I mentioned his name earlier, that's a guy who definitely could step in and take over the that they want to bring in to compete at the center position. I think a guy like Treader, that happens if they're struggling with Brunskill and Brendel. Otherwise, they don't make a move. So we'll see how this one plays out. But I think the only way that an offensive lineman comes in for agency is if they're moving somebody. They're coming in to replace one of these other guys, and it would probably most likely be the center. I don't see a center or right guard, I guess, if Brendel slide into the center. But they seem to be pretty high on what they have already in terms of the right guards. They have a bunch of young guys that I think should be getting the run first. Really quick, Darren asks, what day are you on with Rob? I am on with Rob Shue every Monday. We do every Monday on my channel from usually we go from 5:30 to 6:30. Yesterday we were on at 5 o'clock. There's some other commitments going on, but typically we'll do my channel on Monday, and then we do on Friday we'll do Rob's channel. So we'll see how that works out during the season. But that gives us the opportunity to do a post-game recap on Mondays on mine, and then doing a preview on his channel. So it'll be fun. And then we're also looking to put together a roundtable with myself, Rob, Jesse Naylor, who I do Hammer Nails with, and then Aaron Labigan from 49ers First Take. So we're working on putting some things together for the content side, and it should be a lot of fun. And I appreciate you, Darren, for saying that you like our content individually, and I do. I enjoy working with others the most. It's hard to carry a conversation by yourself. That's why when I'm on here alone, I take a little bit more of the questions from the comment section, because you guys help carry the conversation at times. So I appreciate it. But those are very kind words. So I appreciate that. And then Mike says, can't wait for your input on practice, Jack. You do great work. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, tomorrow's the day, the first day of training camp, the first day of practice. Can't wait to get out there to Levi Stadium tomorrow for day one of training camp. No pads. I think the pads are they're going to go possibly August 1st being the first day in pads. We'll see. It might be Saturday. But I will definitely be there on the first couple of days. I'll be there tomorrow and Thursday, and then I'll be back on Saturday as well. So keep an eye on the channel. A lot of content coming up at you. Really quick, just want to say thank you to everybody in the comments section who joined, who participated in the discussion today. One last piece I forgot. This is, shoot, I should have brought this up really quick, but you guys forgot to remind me about D Ford. You guys remember D Ford? He was a defensive lineman. The 49ers traded some picks away, spent a bunch of money back in 2019. Well, D Ford is with the 49ers for now. According to John Lynch, they're working on some things there. It sounded to me like the Players Association is taking a look at what they're trying to do. Once everything gets cleared, then there will be a transaction. And John Lynch says to keep an eye out for a transaction regarding D Ford later on this week. So D Ford will not be back with the 49ers. It's going to save him about $1 million. So, that's where we are. That's the full rundown. That's everything that I took away from today, from day one of training camp. Tomorrow is practice number 1. And I want to say thank you really very much to Rain Energy Productions, who says, hello, Jack, just subscribe, go Niners. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's awesome. Really appreciate it. And the same thing with Luke, says hit that thumbs up button. Yes, if you could hit that like button, hit subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the channel. Chris Royal coming in with the super chat at the end. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Chris. He says, thanks, Jack. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Chris. If you guys could hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and then do me one other favor. Go to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. Make that a favorite on your web browser so that you can go there and you can check out the written articles on a daily basis. There's content now that the season's upon us. There'll be something there every day. So please go check that out on a regular basis as well. They're the ones that help me be able to do everything that I'm doing. If it wasn't for the Press Democrat and the Inside the 49ers blog over there that I write on, I wouldn't be able to give you guys as much information as I do from being at practices and at the game. So really appreciate everybody for taking the time to join. Like, subscribe, hit that bell notification so you know that when we're on all the time. Thanks to everybody. Take care. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. I will be back tomorrow around 2 o'clock would be my guess. Practice will wrap up around noon. We get to hear from the players. I'll do my write-up, and then I'll be on here. So somewhere between 2 and 3, be back on the channel to check it out. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll talk to you soon.